Why do you think business continuity training is important, and who do you think it's for in the business?
Well, there's different levels. So I remember when I first got the job, way back about 15 years ago or so, and there was no training available for me at that point. I was like a lost soul in the business, and they said, well, I know, let's get him to do business continuity management. And I was interviewed by one of the directors, and they gave me the specification that was available then, which was called Publicly Available Specification Number 56, which is a real catchy title. And they said, read it when you're on a flight back to Estonia, and then we'll do a telephone interview. And I read this. This was before the British Standard 25999. And in the interview, I got really enthusiastic about the topic. And the guy said, okay, you are now our company expert. And this is a FTSE 100 company. And I said, well, how can I claim to be the expert? He said, because you're the only person I ever know who's ever read that standard. So in those days, you were sort of dropped in, whether you were trained or not. And I remember it was probably 2 years of doing the job the best you think you can before I actually asked if I could go on some formal training. And my mentor he retired last year. He's a double fellow of the institute. And I remember because I'd been doing it my way for 2 years, I just argued with him all week. So I was on the 5-day course, and I just kept saying, that's not right, that's not right. And actually, he was quite good, because what he said to me was, that's because you're doing it the way you think you should do it, but you're not actually following best practice. So the benefit of going on those training, especially the 5-day CBCI course, is to actually learn what is best practice, or rather good practice guidelines. And whether you do it that way or not, it expands your mind, it expands your thinking. It sort of tells you how the BCI think you should do it as good practice. And hopefully lots of people go away thinking, actually, I might be able to change the way we do that to make it better. So first of all, it's good for people who have the role at a high level and want to be competent. But equally, I run courses that I call champions courses. So they're lower in detail, but in actual fact, I'm getting buy-in from people at the next tier down, or even the operational tier down for business continuity. So the training is for everybody. I mean, you can do anything from e-learning packages, because I actually assisted the BCI to write their e-learning package, which was great. So there's e-learning packages which you can get from the BCI, you can get them from Continuity Shop. So it goes right from people who are new to the topic and new to the business, right through to people they've been actually doing the job for years, but actually they've done it the way that somebody else has passed on to them, and not the way good practice is. So the thing with going on the good practice course as well is what you learn is current thinking rather than what you've been doing for years and years and years. So hopefully when I'm on I get a mixture on the courses. I get people who think they've done it for years and they think they've done it well, and I get people who are absolutely new to it. So it's for anybody, really.
And do you think that the certification is necessary to kickstart your business continuity career? And do you think it helps with career progression and new job opportunities?
I think it's preferable good practice. I'm going to quote you the book now. Good Practice Guidelines, Professional Practice 2 says you want competent people. Now, competency isn't always training, sometimes it's experience. But if your organisation is going to certify to the international standard, one of the tests is that you've got competent people. And one of the best ways to prove you've got competent people is if they're CBCI qualified. It's the only qualification I know that will withstand that test. So I think it's good for that aspect. I've had people on the course who've said to their line managers, I'm not doing the topic unless you send me on the course, which is excellent. And then they get sent on the course. But as I said before, you get so many people who've been doing it for a long time. And quite often it's when maybe they're thinking of a role change and they're going to go and do this from public to private sector, or they're maybe going to go and do this as a consultant, and they want to actually understand what good practice looks like. So I think it is important. I think it's important because it provides evidence of competency at that point. Because what we try and do is when you do the 5-day course, we don't want to turn out robotic people who can pass an exam. We want to deliver practitioners, really. So we try and make it a healthy mixture of theory and practice.
Nice. And how do you think it's viewed by employers then, the certification? Is this seen as?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think if they are wishing to certify to the international standard, it's seen as a must-have. So lots of people come on the course and say we're going to certify, so we need to do it. But that's because they're being held to account by auditors. I'm quite sceptical about what not public, I'm thinking more top management thoughts are on whether people should be certified. I think it's more driven by the people who want it rather than the top management, which I think is a bit of a shame, really. What I would like to see is that business continuity fits more into learning and development teams. And I'd like to see this written into the next good practice guideline, which is in the next year or so, which I've volunteered to help with. But I think companies need to have a maturity model for the topic. And that maturity model needs to be built into learning and development. And in that case, when you get the role, the learning and development teams and the HR teams should be able to say, these are the competencies you need for that role. We've already worked them out. It's in your learning and development package, and then you must go on it. But to do that, they need that top management support, or rather top-down pressure to say, we feel there's a value to this, so we want you to do it.
Why do you think there's a hesitancy with top management not investing in these courses?
I think there's a hesitancy in business continuity generally. I mean, the webinar I did last week talked about return on investment and talked about. I don't believe we're good at selling business continuity as a value proposition. I think too often top management see it as a box to tick, to meet a standard, or to be compliant against an audit. And I think what we need to do, and there's a webinar coming up at the end of this month. It's not me, but I'm going to listen to it because it sounds really interesting, and it's about how to sell business continuity as a value-added proposition and what the metrics are. So it's one of the other fellows, I think, or a member of the BCI, and they're on, I think, the last day of Education Month, I think. So I think that's a good one to look out for. But we need to sell it more, that there is a genuine benefit to doing it rather than ticking a box, so you can have a compliant audit.
Yeah. And do you think that is by kind of making it like a feasible investment, like a better investment to top managers?
I think the difficulty is what you're trying to do is you're trying to prove a cost benefit for something that they believe may never happen, because it's all about planning for the future. If they've been convinced it's a very low likelihood event by the risk teams, they don't see the value in it so much because they think, well, it's not going to happen on my watch. And then it does. So many times when you say to people on the classes, are your priorities set by top management? They often say, no, it comes from the bottom up, comes from operations upwards. Excuse me. And it really, good practice suggests that it should come top down. And I've been in board meetings, even in the last 18 months. And when you actually say to top management, this is for you to set the priorities, they sort of look at you in a fog, like don't I have people to do that for me? But it's not, it's their risk appetite. It's them that should actually set the priorities at the top. And then that should be passed down to the organization. And then at some point, you reach the point where you're about to put the solution in place. And then once they've costed that solution, they might change their mind on the priorities, because they might say, okay, well, I don't want to invest that much right now for something I think is a low likelihood event. So I think the problem is people come at this, I think I said this in the webinar last week, people come at this with a risk lens. They look at impact and likelihood, which is wrong. They should be looking at impact over time. So they should be looking at what will happen when it happens, not if it will happen. And the two things need to work better together, I think, as two disciplines. One can actually downplay the other if you're not careful.
So I think you've already touched on why business continuity is important, but in your opinion, into the future, how do you think organisations will approach business continuity?
I'm sort of hopeful and slightly skeptical on this. So they've just lived through, or living still through, COVID-19. And I think what will happen is people will come out the back of COVID-19 and two things could happen. I think it'll be very polarized. I think people will either say, we did really well there, and pat themselves on the back. And actually, we didn't use the plan, did we? Because we did it through crisis management. So what's this thing called business continuity all about? Why do we need all these plans? Because we did really well without one. Or they'll come out the other end and say, that was really scary, that. And if we'd have had a plan, we would have fared better and we would have recovered quicker. So I think there's lots of questions being asked at the moment. I think a lot of people are still they're not quite in post-incident because we're not there yet, but they're still patting each other on the back saying, well done. But I think in the ultimate wash-up sessions, maybe next year, when there's a lot more investigation as to what went on, I think people might say, actually, we could have done that better had we have planned better. And the reason the reason it's been done by crisis management so much in this COVID-19 event is because people had the wrong assumptions about pandemic, I believe, based in. It was all centered around flu pandemic. And this was a different type of pandemic. So they need to think broader, I think, and open their minds up to that fact.
So do you think that the pandemic has changed the perception then of business continuity?
People that come in the class tell me it has. And usually after an event, there's a sort of a muscle memory where people are still in that sort of zone of fear where they've lived through it. And we've just got to capitalize on it now and make people realize that this is how you feel now. It's how you'll feel in the next event. And the more prepared you are, the better you'll fare in that event. Because really, we want to lower the impact by reducing the timescale of the event. I talk to people now from even my old organisation and say, have you reached your recovery time objective? Lots of people are saying to me, we don't know, because we haven't expressed our recovery time objective correctly in the first place. So I hear myself saying this more and more in the classes. You think you have a time to reach a recovery, but you've not stated what the destination looks like. So you don't really know when you've got there yet. And you need to be better at setting your minimum business continuity objectives. And then at least you've got a destination and a time instead of just a time. So it should. I mean, if we can't leverage off a world pandemic and get people to take notice, when will we ever get people to take notice?
Yeah.
But people move around, don't they? People, you get people interested at top management level, and then they move on, they retire, new blood comes in. So it's a constant message you've got to give to bring the newbies so that they get it right from the beginning.
Yeah. So how do you think it contributes then, business continuity, to organizational resilience?
Resilience. I don't think people understand resilience. Sometimes I'm not really sure I understand resilience. I've done so much reading about it. It's a huge topic, and I have actually tutored the 1-day resilience course that the BCI deliver. And then it's only then when you do that you realise it's such a massive topic. And business continuity is one facet of resilience. It's not resilience in itself. You've got to have BC. I utilise the phrases that auditors use and risk managers use. So BC is a responsive control to an event, and risk management is a preventative control to an event. So you've got to prevent and respond to get any kind of resilience, but then it expands out into my other favourite topic, which is supply chain. So if you don't expand that into your supply chain, and it's on the news nearly every day now, about lack of supplies, lack of drivers, lack of containers, and now it's gas, and gas prices are going up. If you don't build resilience into all your departments and all your directorates, then it's not resilience. And people don't understand how large that topic is. But I think BC is one of the most fundamental things, because they talk about resilience being something that your ability to bounce back. And without that plan, without that planned response, you don't have the ability to bounce back unless you do it through a crisis management function, which will take you longer and longer, and potentially you get more impacts. What you see is people dealing with events through crisis management, but actually you want a healthy ratio that most events are dealt with through business continuity, and some events are dealt with through crisis management.
So looking at the future then, would you say that business continuity is key to organizational resilience?
I don't think you can do organizational resilience without business continuity at all. What you see in the world really is different institutes trying to be the lead. So everybody wants it to be risk and resilience, but that's only if you're in their institute. I did some work with I'm a member of the CIPS, the Procurement Institute. They want it to be supply chain risk and resilience, whereas we at the BCI, we call it business continuity and resilience. And they all need to come together, frankly. I've tried this. I've had debates with David Thorpe, and I know David Thorpe's he's a big proponent of this, trying to get this holistic approach to get people together. But it's breaking them out of the silos to get them to actually come together and see that we've all got a part to play in this, and then we should all be joining forces to develop resilience. And we are a big player, because we deal with it when it's happened, after it's happened, whereas everybody else is talking about will it happen. We talk about when it happens. So we are a big player in that. It is a key function.
So have you got any upcoming CBCI courses that you would like to mention coming up?
You name it, every month we're solid at Continuity Shop. It's great. I'm doing a foundation course this week, starts tomorrow. I was training last week in the sort of broken down topics that you break the cycle down and you can deliver them in separate bundles. So I was all last week. We had a CBCI the week before that. I think we had one before that. I've got a CBCI the week after next. I'm on standby for CBCIs in October in case one of our other tutors isn't available. And I'm pretty confident I'm going to Helsinki in November. So we're looking to get a critical mass of people in Helsinki. And this is something that the BCI are promoting through this new chapter, new Helsinki chapter, or new Finnish chapter, I should say. So I think I'm in Helsinki the last month of November, and we've got CBCIs all the way up to Christmas. We sometimes go way up until 2 weeks before Christmas delivering CBCIs. So yeah, it's hectic, it's busy, and I'm pleased to say that our score rates on the exams are still up in the 99. Well, my personal ones definitely are still up in the 99%. So because that's when, as a tutor, that's when you get a buzz out of it. When you've been with these people all week, and people mustn't underestimate. It's a tough exam and it's quite stressful for the week. But when they actually come back to you shortly afterwards and say, I've merited, and I've passed or whatever, you get quite a buzz as a tutor, because you've moved somebody on to the next level at that point.